And at the end of the night, when that headliner goes on, and I smell myself and I almost want to get sick because I'm that stinky and I have that much dust on me because we do it at we take a horse track and we turn it into a concert venue. Radio needs to work together. I think rather than working on cutting people down, chopping their legs off, we need to work together to build a story for radio, for our medium. It's beyond just the spot business. Joe Blow, who says this is up the ramp of a song, isn't creating a bond, isn't creating a relationship with a listener. It's show business. You know, our personalities are stars. And we need to make sure that we remember that. That was probably the worst manager that I ever worked for in my career. It's certainly nearly caused me to leave that market. And I look out and I see those people having fun, creating memories with their families. And I look and I say, you know what? Local radio did this.
Welcome to our new series where Lee Jacobs and I talk to some of broadcast radio's most successful pros. These are the guys still in the trenches, and gals, and who are arguably facing some of the greatest challenges that any radio executive has faced at any point in the last 100 years of broadcast audio media. These are folks not only surviving, but thriving. And Lee, the reason I think we're doing this series is because there's an awful lot of new PDs getting plunked into the chair, usually, from air staffs, because there's just not a lot of money to expand budgets these days.
Right.
And so we're finding people that I think have the wisdom that can really help an early in his or her career program director flourish.
Right. In our position, we talk to them every week, people who have been jocks, working hard for years, and suddenly, oh, I'm the PD. Okay. So let's give them some great information from a guy like
Chad Rufer, currently Director of Programming for Bonneville Sacramento, where he plays a key role in steering the programming strategy for his group stations. Chad's approach not only emphasizes strategic programming, but also fosters a culture of innovation and excellence within the team. This role underscores his extensive background in radio and media, where he has constantly demonstrated a passion for evolving landscapes and a knack for nurturing talent. His current position also allows him to leverage experiences and insights to shape the future broadcasting with new tech and new processes in the Sacramento area. Chad is a NuVoodoo Master of the airwaves. How about that for a build-up?
Thank you. It sounds like an overkill, but I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation to join.
Well, one of the things that really impressed both Lee and I, anyone can have a good monthly, and I know that as we're speaking to you, recording this in early May 2024, you've just had yet another report card. I think this was the March monthly, where for about the millionth time, your stations on the women's side, which is where you focus, are number 1, 2, and 3 once again. It's the consistency that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. No, we're very lucky to have great brands at Bonneville, Sacramento, and we have great people that help produce the great brands. We're lucky enough to be able to have the resources to help support those brands as well, and I think that's important to be able to keep them healthy. They don't just magically continue on the train track, and I think one of the things that we as broadcasters and quite honestly in the media industry, we go out and we ask people to give us their money to be able to market their product. And I think it's really important that we do the same for our product. And that's something I'm really proud that Bonneville really does believe in.
You've spent a good quarter of a century being accountable for ratings, having that Nielsen monkey on your back, and staff reports into you. So for a new program director, a young program director, what are the 1 or 2 things that only experience can teach, that if you could pass it along to someone just starting out, or maybe to your younger self, what would those things be?
I think the thing that I was warned about early on in my career that was going to take some time to be able to learn was the art of coaching talent. How to be able to work with them, how to be able to motivate them, what drives them, because every single one of the talent operate differently. They're motivated by different things. Some are motivated by fame. Some are motivated by great ratings. Some are motivated by time off. Some are motivated by big bonus checks. And it's up to us as managers to be able to find out what motivates them. And in the same way, be able to coach them in a way that makes a meaningful impact. And I think almost most importantly, the talent that you coach, they've got to know that you're a fan and that you believe in them, because they are fragile to an extent. And I think that we need to remember that. And so as you're new and getting set up in, in that chair for the first time and learning how to be able to coach talent, I think it's really important to be able to surround yourself by people that have been there before and that you think are good talent coaches, and be able to learn from them. Even sitting in a morning show meeting with, let's say, a consultant. And I know that word bothers some people, the word consultant. There are great tutors out there. I'm here to tell you, not all of the consultants are bad. There are people that want to help young programmers and young leaders grow. They want to be able to teach them the skill set that's going to make them successful, because they want to leave a lasting legacy too. They don't want to be the end of it. And I consider myself really fortunate that, I had that. And, in someone like a Steve Goldstein or a Mike Donovan, who took time to be able to help me understand things about talent and to be able to how to motivate them and how to coach them. Because I will tell you, as a young programmer, I did go in with an iron fist on more than one occasion, and it was a terrible mistake, and it backfired on me. And I never ended up getting the respect of the show, because it became a fight, and it was a really valuable lesson to learn. And, I walked away from that, knowing that the next time around I needed to do better.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Chad, but can you think, I don't want you, and I definitely don't want you to name names unless you really want to, but are there experiences that you can recall across your career where something went, it either went exactly as you'd hoped it did, or it turned out okay with talent, but it maybe wasn't what you thought going in?
Yeah, I think the first couple of times that I dealt with live morning shows, bigger live morning shows, were I could have used some additional help. And when I first went to Clarksville, Tennessee in 2001, I worked with Jack, he's now on the East Coast working in Christian radio, has had a very successful career. And then Gretchen Cordy, who was on Survivor season 1. So we had teamed them up. Saga had just purchased the radio stations. And working with them and trying to pair someone who'd never been on radio, and then a TV star, because that was at the time where Survivor was huge, and being able to work with the two of them. And I was 2 years out of college, and so there were a lot of things that I thought I knew that I didn't know yet. And I made some mistakes there, and they did well for themselves. And, at that point, working with Steve Goldstein and having somebody like that I could bounce ideas by certainly helped. But it could have been better. It was a learning lesson for me. And, I still talk to Jack, and, it's, you look back on some of those times, and you say, hey, it made us all better. It made us better broadcasters, and certainly were really great lessons for me to learn as a new manager. And, when I got my first programming job, one of the first books somebody got me was The 1 Minute Manager. And I try to pay that forward now with other folks that I help get into the programming chairs or become managers of other companies or promotions directors. I think that book is important. I think it sums it up. It's a very easy read. I think the series is fantastic. And I think those things benefit young up and coming managers. And I think that's the toughest skill set for so many of these folks to learn, is learning how to be a manager, learning how to be, a leader, not ruling by this iron fist, and it's, I'm the boss and you need to do it my way just because I said it. We all look back at our parents, and it's the do as I say, not as I do sort of thing.
Hey, speaking of the boss, I seem to remember there's another book besides 1 Minute Manager that you think is a pretty good read for a program director.
Oh, I certainly like Management Lessons Learned from Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
Sopranos is such an amazing TV show. In fact, my wife and I just went back and revisited it over the last
Yep.
couple of weeks because there was a dry spell on TV, and those that have watched the show and understand it really would benefit from watching or from reading that book, because as you go through it, there were several things during the course of that TV show where Tony had to make very difficult decisions. But the biggest thing was his people trusted him. And they knew, even when he made decisions that really upset them, they knew that he was doing it for the best interests of the family. But the book as a whole, I thought was just so well written and so spot on.
So you probably, we all had to whack people, or we've been whacked in radio, to use that pun. But there's also the business about, you take people along for the ride in your career, you make them capo, and they do your bidding, and your ability to command and lead gives you leverage. So let's talk about some of the ways that you've been able to leverage talent, APDs, maybe sales managers, people who can help you achieve the end of consistent ratings.
I think everybody needs to remember that you can't divide each one of the areas in our radio station and put up a wall and say, this one's mine, this one's yours, and this one's his or hers. It all functions together. If I have great ratings, but the sales team doesn't convert that into revenue, my marketing could potentially disappear and my research could disappear, which therefore is then going to have an impact on my ratings. And it goes the other way too. So it's important that I help every part of the team be able to be as successful as possible. And that's a relationship that, it goes beyond just the place that you oversee. I think everybody needs to remember that there is a business side to this industry, and it's really, really important. Too many programmers, even that I've met, have not looked at it that way. They say, oh, they're adding inventory. Oh, they're making us do blogs. Oh, they're making us do events. And what that is doing is creating a divide between departments, and the programmers aren't looking at it from a business sense. And I think it's so important that programmers understand that it's more than just putting the great ratings on the table. This is a business. We have to make money. And I think one of the people that understands that so amazing, and that's a testament to his career, is Chris Olivero. Brilliant program director, now a general was the head of programming for CBS, and now a general manager. It's not a lot of programming people, and I should say that it isn't everyday programming people that can up and make that transition. I mean, you have brilliant people like Chris Olivero, like a Bob Call in Denver, who was an original program director for that station. And
no, I competed against him. Yep, I can tell you, he was
brilliant.
Tough guy.
And Carl Gardner was the same way, who was with Bonneville in Seattle and San Francisco, a programming person who understood the business, grew into the general manager role, and has been successful. And I'd say the same about someone like Ryan Hatch in Phoenix. Again, people who understand the business. The program directors who don't take time to understand the business, try to siphon themselves off from everybody else, it's going to be a really tough go, especially right now with the challenge that we're dealing with, with local spot being down, the transition to digital. I think it's important that everybody learn every skill set they can. Everybody needs to be a Swiss Army knife.
There's a question I just got to ask. Chad, why did you get into radio?
Lee, I was lucky enough to get into radio in high school. And for most
we have that in common.
I'm so fortunate. And it really kills me now that internship programs in a lot of instances are a way of the past because of local state labor laws. I guess that should be a good thing, right? I could tell you the stories about how when I got my first real commercial job, I would go in and anchor news in the afternoon, do a party song show on the AC from 7 to midnight, and the overnight board operator on the AM station would call in sick or not show up, and I would do that until 5 in the morning. But you know what?
Indentured servitude was a part of our careers, for sure.
I was happy to do it because I was there and I was in it. But, you know, Lee, to answer your question, most of my life, I was a little overweight. I had a kidney problem when I was growing up, so I was on prednisone for a lot of my younger life, and so I was chunky, and so I never was really part of the popular crowd. And going into high school at 5'6", I realized probably not going to play football professionally and probably not going to play it in high school. So I needed to find something that was going to be fun, and that was, hey, the popular guy on the radio, that might be a way to be able to meet girls. And so it kind of started in a way where that it probably shouldn't have, but it did, like any 14-year-old boy, right? But I kind of found that I had a natural knack for it, and I really enjoyed, you know, the being on air part of it at the beginning, and I did play-by-play sports. It afforded me so many opportunities, and you know, if it wasn't for Brian Christensen, who's who was the radio advisor, now he still teaches high school now at a different high school in just outside of Des Moines. If it wasn't for him really giving me that opportunity, I'd have been in deep trouble. I wouldn't be as successful as I am today, no matter what I'm doing. And by the way, I also had this kind of outspoken nature with teachers, with other kids. And so I wasn't exactly a real, you know, easy person to be able to deal with. I was a treat sometimes. So I was very lucky that people had patience with me and nurtured me. And they said, wow, you really have a knack for this. But I was always a hard worker. And so he helped me, you know, elevate and really get started, you know, in my career. And so lucky for that.
Didn't you do this professionally while you were in high school? I think I seem to remember you were doing some part-time work in a paid capacity too.
I did. So, you know, so the first 2 years, freshman, sophomore, and part of my junior year, it was just doing high school radio. And I got an internship at what was Palmer Communications, then ended up going to Jacor, and now part of iHeart. I got in as doing a Saturday night, or I'm sorry, it was a Sunday night. I was running the board for Casey Kasem's Countdown. And then I had 2 hours, 10 to midnight, I got to be on the air. And it was the greatest thing ever. That evolved into a party song show on the AC station. I wanted to learn how to produce news. So I board opped on the news talk station. I anchored news on the news talk station. All of that while going to high school and trying to balance that. And, you know, there were times, you know, late nights where my dad wasn't real happy that I was out that late, or that I would go in and run the board. If the morning show was going out for an event, I would go in and run the morning show for at least as long as I could before I had to go to school. And the talent on that station were very high profile in town. And I remember I would always have to ask one of them to write me a, you know, I'm coming in late for school though.
You got a note.
Yeah. And then, you know,
Jock ate my homework.
Well, no, it was even worse because pre-voice tracking, I remember getting busted and saying I was sick, and I was actually on the air filling in for somebody. And then one of the teachers turned on the radio and I was busted. And I remember my dad was so pissed with me that I had done that. And so there were a lot of great stories. It really gave me an amazing opportunity. Then, you know, even up through college, and you know, where I was part of different stunts that the morning show did, because at that time in my career, I wasn't going to say no.
Lee, I think you and I and Chad all have this in common, where we became program directors in the first year as full-time pros in the business. I think you didn't you, Chad? You moved. I think you moved from your hometown down to Florida. And when you went to college, you were also, maybe I got this wrong, but I seem to remember you were promoted to program director either while you were still in college, or maybe it was just after.
Yeah, I was I think my official title was programming assistant while I was wrapping up college. I was doing music logs for 2 stations.
Yeah.
Had a great
Down
OM
in Florida, right?
Yeah, in Florida, and they were willing to take time with me. Mike Donovan was the consultant of those stations at the time. He was willing to take time with me and teach me different things. I had also at that point had linked up with John Zellner through a friend of mine who was doing weekend overnights for John in Kansas City. He became a phenomenal mentor, and my goal was when I graduated college that I wanted to walk out of college and be a program director. Because I was already in media. So my college degree was in interdisciplinary social sciences, which focused on political science. So why do radio? I was already doing it. But I wanted to be able to walk out of college and be a PD. And there wasn't anything for me at that station that I was at. So one of the competitors ended up hiring me really right out of college. And I'm so grateful for that. And it's Brian Olson, who used to oversee iHeart in Miami and then grew into a much larger corporate role. But he was the GM at Renda in Southwest Florida at that time. And, he and I had known each other just through some mutual friends. And I'm very grateful that he gave me that opportunity that afforded me my first start, which then allowed me to transition then into Saga a couple of years later and work for Steve Goldstein, which was also always a dream because I followed his writings and followed the success of Saga growing up in the Midwest. And he's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't just doing radio too. I seem to remember that. And I think one of your big influences was production.
So similar to when I got started, it was don't say no to anything. I wanted to learn all the aspects of the business. And admittedly, sales, I never was on the streets as an AE. But production was always intriguing to me. So that was back when we had the 8 tracks on reels, and we in Des Moines had just gotten one of those fancy Orban DSE 7000s.
Ooh.
So got to do digital editing on the 8-track digital editor and learn that. And when after my freshman year of college, my parents, I was in Des Moines, Iowa, and my parents said, "Hey, got enough of the Midwest. They've lived there all their lives." And they said, "We're retiring down to Florida. So you have 2 choices. You can either stay here, continue going to college in Des Moines, and continue with the radio stations you're at, or you can come down to Florida." And after spending 19 years in the Midwest, it was a no-brainer. I'm in. Let's go to Florida. And so I managed to get a part-time on-air job down there. And then I also linked up with the team at Advantage Productions. And it's Brian Lee's father at the time owned it. And Brian obviously has gone on to just unbelievably big things. And at that point, Jennifer Vaughn was there and Chris Corley was part of that team. And it was so unbelievable to be around that team. Ricky, who's now was with now with iHeart. So many people went through the doors of Advantage Productions, and it was part of their career, and in many instances getting started in voiceover. Joe Edwards, who's one of the creators of Short Bus, he and I worked at Advantage together. At that time, he went on to Channel 933 in San Diego to be their imaging director. And every station that I have ever programmed in my career, Joe has imaged for me. And I think he probably wishes to a lot of extent that he hadn't met me, because I truly am like, "Hey, just FYI, you're doing this radio station for me." And I think I'm his only main client that he has. And I think that's by design, because he doesn't really have time to do it, but he tolerates me, and I appreciate that. But the years at Advantage and learning production, and being again around people like Brian Lee and Chris Corley, and the early times of Jeff Berlin before he blew up and went really big. I consider myself very, very fortunate to have been part of that, and certainly being a part of someone like Chris Corley's life. Rest in peace. He was just unbelievable, and just such a magnificent human being. And with the one exception of the time where he ran my dad's boat up on a mud bar and broke the prop, but he paid for it at least. But that's a credit to Chris Corley, by the way, while I was water skiing behind it too. But that's a whole nother. Whoops. Wrong side of the markers, by the way. Red, right, return. Just FYI.
Are radio stations today not produced enough? Are they overproduced? I cut my teeth as a production person in radio and embraced that thoroughly in the early part of my career. And it was really it shaped my programming philosophy, at least back then. Where do you think we are with that in the wearables PPM era?
You know what? I think we lost a lot of creativity when PPM came into play. I think everybody completely neutered their radio station in an effort to be able to play the PPM game. When I was living in Florida, I used to drive just far enough north. I lived in Fort Myers and drove just far enough north so I could hear FLZ and hear what Eric Chase was doing up there. And the brilliance that him and BJ and Dom, the things that came out of the speakers were, first off, a lot of it you couldn't do this these days anyways, but it was just so creative. And those were things I wanted to be able to imitate. And you would hear, the old Z100 legal ID from the tip top of the Empire State Building and the same. Yeah. And so, right. And the same with Kiss in Los Angeles. It was the same way, where everybody then ended up going out and buying kilohertz, the imaging package. Mm-hmm. So people could follow along and do that. It was different. And now PPM coupled, by the way, with programmers being spread so thin, and there's no more creative services directors. That used to be a big deal in all of the radio stations. And that goes to copywriting too for commercials. These were the people that we used to laugh that they were the crazy ones, because they would come in at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they were just weird. But the stuff that they were able to write that would come through the speakers, the way that they would produce it, the voiceover people, you went, where did you come up with that? Where I'm worried about somebody's well-being because you're so crazy you wrote that.
Right.
But I think that we went extreme to one side, and I think there's a happy medium in the middle. And it's similar to when PPM came on. We cut out a lot of the personality from morning shows, afternoon shows, cut down promos. And now we're finding out that really in this world now with DSPs, anybody can be a jukebox, but it takes a lot to be a personality. Listeners want personality. And you take companies like Hubbard, for example, that is doing afternoon shows on a lot of their hot AC stations and having great success with them. And so that gives me hope for creativity and personality moving forward.
I think listeners in 2024 are receptive to relevance. What's in it from my perspective? We all deal with digital media, YouTube et al., and we're targeted. We feel the degree to which, they know I like that, so they're showing me more of that. Can you talk a little about how you think about tapping into what your audience wants to hear and then reflecting that back at them?
One of the biggest things that I say to my talent when we're going through coaching sessions is, where's the damn right Me Too moment? And it's something that I learned from Bobby Irwin in Colorado Springs. And it's, where's the moment where the listener hears what the talent says, the topic the talent's talking about, the engagement that the talent has, and they say, damn right, me too. There's a relationship. You're building a bond with somebody, and there needs to be more of that. And there's ways to do it in PPM. With knowing that you have to get to the topic and hook somebody in quickly. I have all of my talent, even on the country station. They know what Chad's going to say. It's going to say, what the hook going to be? Think about the old hip hop song, what the hook going to be? That's what I say to them. And it resonates, because they know they have to hook early to be able to get the audience engaged. You can do compelling content. It isn't about a stopwatch and going, you have to do 2 minutes. You have to do 1 minute and 30 seconds. There's going to be crappy 1 minute and 30 second breaks. And there's going to be amazing 5-minute breaks that the audience is going to stay through. It's about creating the hook, continuing the chapters as the morning show evolves the story. It's and things continue to grow to the climax and then have a natural conclusion rather than just hitting a brick wall right after the climax. All of those sort of things, it's like the art of storytelling. And I think it's important that all talent realize that, not just the morning shows, but the afternoon shows as well. The promotions people, I think it's important there. They're part of the storytelling too.
So far, we've talked about producing a stationality. We've talked about getting along with sales and recognizing that it's a business. And I was glad to hear we came out of the box talking about the most important asset we have, our talent and people. But I think I've just described a full week. But let's be honest, it's 2024. You not only have to produce and deliver ratings from multiple radio stations, manage a staff, you've also got some NTR to produce. That's a key part of the financial portfolio of your cluster. And you're very active in that. You've got what, country, top 40, hot AC. So those are very active formats. And are you doing you're doing a bunch of concerts and festivals?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we do here. And so when I first came to what was CBS 14 years ago, rather, I had promoted concerts before, smaller events. The difference was we never took a financial risk for it. I didn't realize the business ramifications that came with it. Absolutely. It was a promotion. It was a promotional vehicle. Here, they, well before I arrived, had found this amazing formula to where taking a risk on the right events calculated will lead to a separate separate revenue stream. And in fact, even more than maybe one of the single radio stations in the course of a year.
Sponsor opportunities, ticket sales.
Absolutely. The market manager, the current market manager and his predecessors. And it's funny enough, the events director, who now is my wife, who has been producing events in this market for 20 plus years, the skill set that she has, honestly, and I tell people, is more important than the skill set I have. You have a lot of the fly-by-night promoters that go out and they try to do concerts. Everybody thinks they're going to be getting rich quick with doing a concert. And then they end up putting people's lives in jeopardy. They don't do them right. They have a poor experience. They give the artist a poor experience. And the thing that this group and this cluster has done is give the audience a great experience at a reasonable ticket price. We put together a great talent lineup, and it becomes an event that, yes, certainly has stress related to it, whether it's booking the artists to be able to come in for the festival, whether it's the sponsorships that come with it, and whether it's the ticket pacing. It is stressful, and it is all year long. We're talking now at the beginning of May. Our big 2-day country festival is coming up in the middle of May, somewhere between 17 and 19,000 people a day for 2 days. And it's this group in Sacramento that puts that show together, from dealing with the artist, ordering the fence, ordering the stage, everything that you can imagine, putting together, the food options. This staff puts it together. And the great thing that I really, really like about it is the bonding that comes with it during that time, because you have AEs taking tickets or handing out food tickets in a VIP area. We have a salesman, this sales manager of ours who is probably 5'2" and 100 pounds soaking wet, carrying 2 bags of 50-pound ice on her back for artists backstage. And people are just getting dirty, and they get into the weeds, and they do it for the goodness of the station and creating the experience for the listeners, and it bonds everybody together. And
now, is this a separate production arm within your cluster, or do you outsource this? Tell me a little bit about how you're pulling this off.
It's within. So we are our events director, and then we have an events coordinator who works with some of the clients. But it's 2 people in that department that really run point on the production of the show. And so Karen, who's our events director, is out on calls with AEs, creating sales packages, creating sales sponsorship opportunities. We are no different than any other mega festival that comes about. I mean, obviously not Stagecoach or Windy City Smokeout in Chicago or to that scale, but I would rival us against any other mid-sized festival with, 15 to 20,000 people a day. And it's this small team that does that. And everyone that day puts their egos aside, problems aside, to be able to produce this event. And it's something that I work on year round. I'm already booking May of 2025 because you have to get that far out in advance for routing. And it isn't as simple as the days, Mike, when you and I were coming up and we'd make a telephone call to the label and give them the date and say, we need 5 artists.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way anymore. You're working not only with the labels, you're working with the booking agencies, you're routing with other festivals. For country, getting artists to come out west is a big ask.
They have to be routed, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yep. And they're expensive because they're all on buses. And this is a full scale production. This isn't a lounge. This is full blown flying lighting rig. And
we're not doing Lodo shows here.
Yeah, it's something that it started well before me, will continue on well after me. They've just done an unbelievable job creating this brand. Country in the Park next year will celebrate 25 years. And this year at 24, we have 11 artists over the course of 2 days. At our Country in the Park in May, we will announce our Country in the Park 2, which is going to be in September. And that'll be 13 to 14,000 people with 5 artists. And so it's a ever going cycle that we're continuing to do that. But we're looking at it big picture is not only is the brand fantastic, not only does it help elevate our country radio station brand. And while the on-air talent sometimes get tired of talking about it because we'll launch it in December and it doesn't pay off until May, it is a great thing as well for the community. And again, it's a testament to Bonneville as well. Bonneville, is a firm believer in using the megaphones that we have access to do good in the community. And, we try to keep the ticket price as low as possible for people to be able to do that. And $45 a day for a lineup where it's Brantley Gilbert, Dustin Lynch, Brian Kelly from Florida Georgia Line, Brian Martin, and Drew Baldridge is a pretty good ticket price. And so we really strive on being able to make it a family experience, a community experience, and something positive that people will take away. And at the end of the night, when that headliner goes on, and I smell myself and I almost want to get sick because I'm that stinky and I have that much dust on me because we do it at we take a horse track and we turn it into a concert venue. And I look out and I see those people having fun, creating memories with their families. And I look and I say, you know what? Local radio did this. Local radio did this. And it's something I'm really proud to be a part of. And we're very fortunate to have the group of people that we do have, because not anybody can do it. It's not as simple as booking artists and putting them at a show.
Lee and I bounce off a lot of people. And so we hear about all the insecurities. And I know, Lee, this is a big part of our daily discussions about, how did you put it to me before the call today with Chad? Where is this going?
Right. Yeah. And I'd love to hear what Chad, what you've got to say about it.
I'm a firm believer in the industry is going to continue on. It's going to continue to evolve as well.
Yeah.
And
audio media has in fact never been healthier when you really think about it.
Yeah, but the consumer has more choice than ever. The walled, the walls that were up around the garden when we started our career, Mike, our careers, and actually you too, Chad, those walls are long gone. The barrier to entry to be part of this is. So what should radio be doing? What do you, and what we asked you to answer before, which is, where is it going?
I think radio needs to work together. I think rather than working on cutting people down, chopping their legs off, we need to work together to build a story for radio, for our medium. It's beyond just the spot business. And I think that's why you've seen so many different companies start diversifying, whether it's their digital, whether that's their O&O, whether that's, their events. They've turned into full-blown marketing agencies. In Sacramento, we were a little ahead of the curve because we always had our events situation going on. And look, even under CBS, I think we were one of the only markets that took these major risks, except for maybe Chicago. And it's a testament to the foresight of people before me that saw that as a revenue opportunity. But this industry's got to stop cutting each other off, and we need to work together to build one another up, because rising tides will lift everybody. And if we don't do it, we're going to do nothing more than cut the legs off from everybody, including ourselves in the long run.
Yep.
And I think moving forward, we need to look for those different ways to be profitable. Let's call a spade a spade. The spot business is going to continue to be tough. It is.
It is. Yep.
And we've got to be able to look for different ways to be able to make this business financially acceptable to, whether it's in Bonneville's, Bonneville situation, our ownership, whether it's iHeart or Odyssey, the stockholders.
Right.
We've got to find a way to be able to make sure that we're returning profit for those folks. This isn't, it's not a charity operation. No one's just going to continue to donate and leave radio stations, as a hobby. We need to make sure that we're looking for those. We're scouring, smart people and saying, hey, what else can we do with the resources that we have at our disposal to be able to, make it buck? But in the same time, I'm really adamant on this whole, we got to stop cutting each other down, because
let me give you a for instance that really bothers me. Lee conducts a lot of research, his department, for the department that I'm associated with, which is mostly marketing, digital marketing these days. And when I saw the podcast study that we did a year ago, Lee, I was actually pissed off that podcasts get more credit for host endorsements driving sales results compared to radio. That's an example of, I think we are the original endorsement folks. I mean, you run endorsements in your radio stations, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're very effective.
They're key. Yeah, they're very effective. And it goes kind of back to when we're talking about personalities. Personalities create bonds with the listeners. Joe Blow, who says this is up the ramp of a song, isn't creating a bond, isn't creating a relationship with a listener. When somebody tells a story about one of their parents' struggle with cancer and eventually passing away, which is something that occurred on our morning show on our country station with our host Cody a few years ago, she painted this picture, created this bond with the audience, created a relationship with people who are like her. And that was such a memorable thing to the audience. And as a endorser now, she's created a bond and a trust with this audience. So when she talks about something, the audience is going to pay attention because of that relationship that she's nurtured.
Radio is show business. Vegas, local advertisers like the banners and the tent and the remote setup and the prize giveaways. And I think we've been a little bit penny wise and pound foolish cutting all that out of our unique selling proposition.
I agree. We all used to joke and we used to say the dog and pony show, right?
Yep.
And it was even for clients. And I think that, we have lost that. And while we shouldn't go out and buy koozies, I don't know. I've never been a fan of koozies.
The koozies.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to tell you I've never ordered them, but I'm not a fan of the koozies. Looking for those sort of opportunities to have our logo and our brand in front of listeners in a tactical sort of way, I think is really, really important. And to your point, it's show business. Our personalities are stars. Here in Sacramento, we have a young man, Chris Watkins, who originally started as a street team member when we owned KSFM. and he was very passionate about sports. And fast forward years down the road, he started doing a podcast about the Sacramento Kings. And then a full-time on-air opportunity became available, and he had groomed his skills through that podcast, and he got his opportunity to his first full-time position. And it said, I remember him setting up remotes as a street teamer. And, that's a testament to someone who really worked their behind off, wanted to cut their chops and do anything that they could to be able to grow in their career, and got that opportunity.
Okay, what about AI? AI voices on radio. Any pressure that you've heard about put on managers to try to replace live talent with bots?
I think it's a great resource right now. And I think it is really important that it's used carefully. I'm not going to tell you that I haven't logged on to Gemini and played around and said, hey, write me a radio promo about X, and that I sometimes was more impressed than others, or rolled my eyes and went, uh-oh, Gemini's going to take my job. But it really is an impressive, it's an impressive resource. But I don't think it's a replacement for people. I know that there are several different companies working on, AI program directors, for lack of a better sense. Obviously, AI jocks have debuted.
Well Said is training voices, and actually Chris Corley's voice. I don't think it's Well Said, but I know that Chris Corley's voice, the late Chris Corley, is actually being trained on an AI to try to bring his legacy back. Which is a little haunting.
It is. I mean, it was always haunting to me when someone would play, because his voice was still all over. Ernie Anderson from the Low Road, and then did the top of the hour at Kiss in Boston, and that was always a little scary. And then I remember seeing on a website like, hey, we have work parts for all of these different radio stations if you want to buy them. The Kiss brand and whatever other brands he had voiced.
Lee, what's the statistic you unearthed last year about the audience perceiving AI on radio?
Oh, it's about 2 in 5 among those who are likely to participate in ratings. They think it's already happening.
They think that jocks have already been replaced by bots.
And that's, from my perspective, that's just because we've tightened it down so much. We've removed the thread of continuity break to break to break in so many cases, where it's just some person who might be a person who says a couple of things, and now we're into spots, and we don't hear from them again until, 26 minutes later, and they say, another 20
But how sad is that? That's a testament. That's our industry. And how sad is that goes on? That people don't know. We need to do better. We need to do better. And again, I'm very hip to the financial portion of it, where it's got to, make financial sense, but in the same, we've also got to develop personalities, because personalities will lead to additional things. I mean, there's revenue streams, whether it's video podcasts, audio podcasts, whether it's endorsements, as we just were talking about. It's really important that we really get our stuff dialed in, because if not, what we're going to end up doing is make it really, really, really easy to become disposable.
It'll be voice tracking too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you talked a lot about the way you like to treat people, but knowing there's going to be a lot of newer managers that are going to be put in chairs like you've been in for the last quarter century. Give us an example of, and you don't have to name names, great managers you've reported to, and maybe a couple of shitty ones. Meaning you don't have to focus on the people, more on what made them great or not.
I'll on the bad side. I had an operations person at one point in my career who ruled with an iron fist. He tried to rule by fear, and he did it with his team, and people were honestly scared of him.
Yep.
And he liked to publicly humiliate people. He would, if he wanted to yell at somebody, he would do it in public. He wouldn't necessarily just do it in his office. He wanted more people, because he wanted people to really fear him. And that was probably the worst manager that I ever worked for in my career. It's certainly nearly caused me to leave that market. very abruptly, because it wasn't something that I was going to put up with. I knew that I deserved better than that. Look, it's kind of like a relationship you look at, and all of a sudden, if you're buying somebody flowers and they're beating the crap out of you every night, then you deserve better.
Yeah.
You need to do some gut and soul searching, and that's what I was doing at the time. And it corrected itself because people believed in me and my ability, and I was very lucky that people stood up for me. People said that's not okay, and we found alternative ways to be able to handle the situation. On the positive side, in the course of your life and in the course of your career, no matter whether it's radio or anything else, you're going to meet people who you're going to build a bond with and that you can trust. And those people, that you can call those people, text those people. They will either bail you out, offer you ideas, be a mentor to you. And I would really encourage everybody to have some of those, and not just people that are in the same situation. We started kind of this conversation early, and there's a lot of radio legends in this industry that have been wrapped up with their career, might be preparing to wrap up their career. Those men and women still have a lot to offer the industry. While they shouldn't necessarily maybe be making all of the calls and all of the decisions to impact those of us that have decades left, they still have a lot to be able to offer. And so do the young programmers coming up, in this industry too. The ones that may think they know more than they really do, you find the right ones that are hungry enough, that really do want to win, that want to succeed in this industry. And it's up to us to be able to nurture those people and be able to get good out of them as well. I think there's a lot of those people. And look, I will tell you, there's in my particular life, Steve Davis, who was a partner at Napoleon Media for a long time, was the VP of programming for CBS in Washington, D.C. He's that guy for me. I'm very lucky to be able to call on him day, night. If I get frustrated, if something's going good and I just want to share a radio geek story, and to be able to ask advice. And sometimes he and I'll talk through it, and he'll offer a piece of advice that I might think is past its prime. And I'll say, okay, what about this? And we'll hone it in together. And so I'm very lucky to have somebody like that in my life to be able to help balance me on the radio front. And yeah, I would encourage the younger folks coming up, because there's a lot of noise that I've read recently where certain legacy programmers and consultants who get called out as past their prime and that they're doing nothing but damaging radio. And I don't know that that's 100% true. I think that, like anything, I think everybody has something to be able to offer. It's just about the way that it's ingested and the way that it's, put into action and planned.
Hey, thanks for this hour.
Yeah.
This was really
pleasure.
Great. It was fun.
Thank you. Me too. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. And, I'm such a firm believer that this industry has has more life left in it. We can't just continue doing things the same way that we've been doing it. We need to look for different ways and different opportunities, to be able to do this. And like I said, we all need to surround ourselves by the right people who want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And in my case, I'm lucky to be surrounded by such a great team where my APD, Sonia Jimenez, has been my ride or die for 14 years. And if I didn't have her helping, I wouldn't be able to carry the amount of stations that I do, carry the weight that I do, or have the success that I have. And same way with, I would say, about our market manager, where if he wouldn't empower me to be able to do what I need to do to win, even when there's a crappy month, because there have been, in one of our brands, we had a really bad year last year. And it was some unfair weighting from Nielsen, and we knew it would come back, and it has. But he stood by my side and supported me. And those are the things I can't stress enough to people coming up. Find the people that are going to support you, build you up, and make you into a better you. And it isn't just about company. There's bad people working in every company, and there's great people working in every single company. Don't just look at it from a global side. Look at who you're working with and who you're going to be working for directly. And that might influence your decision on a lot.
Chad Rufer,
Yeah.
Bonneville Broadcasting, a NuVoodoo master of the airwaves.
NuVoodoo builds digital products and conducts research and marketing campaigns for clients.
It's easy to get in touch. Drop us a line at tellmemore@nuvoodoo.com.